August 31st, 1997, 12:23 a.m., Pont de l'Alma-Tunnel, Paris. The tunnel security camera captured it for exactly 3.7 seconds. A white Fiat Uno entering the tunnel moments before the Mercedes carrying Princess Diana. The camera recorded the Fiat swerving slightly, making contact with the Mercedes, then disappearing into the Parisian night. For 26 years, that white Fiat Uno has been one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. French investigators searched for it desperately in the days and weeks following the crash. They found paint transfer on the Mercedes, white paint that matched the Fiat Uno model. They found a broken taillight fragment at the crash site, a piece that could only have come from a 1983-1987 Fiat Uno. But they never found the car, and more importantly, they never found the driver, until now. Because what the public was never told, what was buried and classified, intelligence files and sealed investigative reports, is that authorities knew who was driving that white Fiat Uno within 72 hours of the crash. They had a name, they had a location. They had evidence that would have blown the tragic accident narrative apart. And then, on direct orders from the highest levels of British and French intelligence, they buried it permanently. This is the story of the white Fiat Uno, the driver who was never supposed to be found, and the conspiracy that has kept the truth hidden for more than a quarter century. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because to understand who was driving that car and why their identity was so dangerous, we have to go back to the days immediately following the crash, when investigators were racing against time to solve the mystery, back to when they were getting close to the truth, and back to when they were ordered to stop looking. September 2nd, 1997, 9:47 a.m., Paris Police Headquarters. Inspector Jean-Claude Mule sat in the incident room, surrounded by photographs, diagrams and witness statements. 3 days since the crash. 3 days since Princess Diana had died. And the pressure from above was crushing. Solve this fast. Find answers. Close the case. The evidence pointed clearly to one critical detail: the white Fiat Uno. 7 witnesses had reported seeing it. 3 had described it swerving in front of or alongside the Mercedes. 1 witness, a taxi driver named François Levistre, had been driving through the tunnel moments before the crash and reported seeing a white Fiat driving erratically, almost like it was trying to block or force another car. The paint transfer was undeniable. White paint on the Mercedes' right side, consistent with side-swiping contact. Chemical analysis confirmed it was automotive. Paint from a Fiat Uno manufactured between 1983 and 1987. And then there was the tail light, a red and white plastic fragment found near the tunnel entrance, positively identified as coming from a Fiat Uno's rear light assembly. Mule spread the photographs across the table. Somewhere in Paris was a white Fiat Uno with fresh damage to its left side and a broken tail light. And somewhere in Paris was a driver who knew exactly what they'd done. "We need to find that car," Mule said to his team. "Issue a bulletin. Every white Fiat Uno in the Paris region, door to door if we have to." What Mules didn't know was that while he was organizing this search, a separate team, a team he didn't even know existed, had already found the car. And they'd already made the decision to bury what they'd discovered. September 3rd, 1997, 2:17 p.m., an apartment building in Le Pré Saint-Gervais. The apartment was in a working-class neighborhood in the northeastern suburbs of Paris. Nothing remarkable about it. Nothing that would draw attention. But in the underground parking garage, covered with a tarp, sat a white 1986 Fiat Uno. The tarp had been placed there on the morning of September 1st, 36 hours after Diana's death. By the time French police began their systematic search for white Fiat Unos in Paris, this car had already been identified, photographed, and documented by a different authority entirely. The man who owned the car was named Henri Sausset, 53 years old, former French military, currently listed as unemployed on official documents, though his bank account showed regular deposits that didn't match his stated income. When the intelligence team arrived at his apartment at 2:17 p.m., On September 3rd, Henri was expecting them. He opened the door before they knocked. "I've been waiting for you," he said in French, his voice surprisingly calm. "I assume you want to talk about that night." The lead officer, who introduced himself only as Garnier from Special Services, nodded. "We need to understand exactly what happened, and we need to understand who gave you your instructions." Henri's face went pale. "I want a lawyer." "You don't need a lawyer. You need to understand your situation. Right now, you're the most dangerous man in France. You're the person who can confirm or deny whether Princess Diana's death was an accident or something else. And there are very powerful people who have a strong preference for which story gets told." "I'm not saying anything without a lawyer." Garnier leaned forward. "You have two choices, Monsieur Saussay. Choice one, you cooperate with us. You tell us everything. In exchange, you disappear. New identity, new country, money to start over, and the guarantee that you'll never be charged with anything related to that night. And choice two? Choice two is that you become a suspect in the death of Princess Diana. Your car is seized as evidence. Your name is released to the press, and you spend the rest of your life, however long that turns out to be, as the most hated man in the world. The paparazzi who are chasing Diana, they'll look like saints compared to what you'll face." Henri sat down heavily. "I didn't kill anyone. I did what I was told. That's all." "Who told you?" "I don't know his name. I received a call 3 weeks before that night. Someone who knew about my background. Someone who knew I needed money. He offered me 50,000 francs to do a simple job." "What job?" Henri closed his eyes. "To be in the Alma tunnel at a specific time. To drive slowly, and if a specific car approached, a dark Mercedes, to make sure I was in its path. To force it to slow down or swerve. Not to cause a crash, just to slow it down." The room went very quiet. "Who called you?" "I never saw him. Everything was done by phone. Calls from different numbers. The money was delivered in cash to a drop point." "Did you know who was in the Mercedes?" "No, I swear I didn't know. He said it was about paparazzi, about helping photographers get better shots by slowing the car down. He said it was harmless, just a traffic obstacle." Garnier studied Henri's face. "But you knew it wasn't harmless once you saw the news?" "Yes." "And you covered your car and hid?" "Yes." "Did the person who hired you contact you after the crash?" Henri nodded slowly. "Once, the morning after. He told me to stay quiet, to hide the car, that someone would contact me soon with instructions. And then you showed up." Garnier stood. "Monsieur Saussay, you're going to come with us now. You're going to give us a full statement, every detail, every phone call, every instruction, and then you're going to disappear. Do you understand?" "What about my family?" "What family?" Henri's voice broke. "I have a daughter, Marie. She's 22. She doesn't know anything about this. She'll be told you died. Car accident. Very tragic. She'll receive a death benefit from your employer, generous enough to ensure she asks no questions. And you'll never contact her again. Those are the terms." Henri buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean for anyone to die, but they did. And now you're going to help us understand exactly how and why." September 5th, 1997, 11:47 p.m., British Intelligence, Headquarters, London. The report landed on the desk of Sir Richard Dearlove, then head of MI6. It was marked Most Secret and UK Eyes Only. The summary was brief but devastating. Subject: Diana crash. Investigation: white Fiat Uno. Driver identified: Henri-Paul Saussay, age 53, former French military. Current asset of unknown origin. Vehicle located and secured. Subject claims he was hired 3 weeks prior to crash to create traffic obstacle in Alma tunnel at specific time. Payment: 50,000 francs, cash delivery. Anonymous employer subject statement suggests pre-planned operation. Not accident, recommend immediate consultation. Disclosure versus suppression. Dearlove read the report 3 times. Then he picked up his secure phone and made a call to Paris. "We have a problem," he said when the call connected. "The Fiat driver is claiming he was hired to be in that tunnel. This wasn't a random car. This was planned. The voice on the other end was calm. Can he identify who hired him? No, everything was done remotely, phone calls and cash drops. But the pattern suggests professional operation. Recommendations. Dearlove looked at the report again. If this becomes public, every conspiracy theory about Diana's death gets validated. The tragic accident narrative collapses. We'll have investigations, inquests, international incidents. The royal family will be under suspicion. Relations with France will be damaged. It will be a disaster. So we bury it. The driver disappears. New identity relocated. The car is destroyed. The investigation focuses on the paparazzi and Henri. Paul, the Fiat becomes a minor detail that was never resolved. A loose end that leads nowhere. What about the French investigators? Inspector Mules and his team? They're looking for the car, but they won't find it. We've already secured it. When their investigation concludes with no Fiat located, it becomes a mystery. Unsolved but not suspicious. The official story remains: drunk driver, excessive speed, tragic accident. And if someone talks? If the Fiat driver or someone else reveals what they know? Dearlove's voice went cold. Then we deal with it. But for now, the priority is containment. The story dies here. Understood? Understood. The call ended. Dearlove took the report and fed it into a shredder. Then he made another call, this one to his counterpart in French intelligence. The Fiat situation is resolved. The driver has been secured and will be relocated. The vehicle will be destroyed. Your investigators will not find it. Make sure Inspector Mules understands that this line of inquiry leads nowhere. Within hours, Inspector Mules received orders from above. The white Fiat Uno. Investigation was to be deprioritized. Focus on other aspects of the crash. The Fiat, while interesting, was not central to understanding what happened. Mules protested. The evidence was solid. The witnesses were credible. Finding that car and driver could answer crucial questions. But the orders were firm, and Mules had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize when political pressure was being applied from heights he couldn't reach. The white Fiat Uno officially became an unresolved element of the investigation. Mentioned in reports. Noted as missing, but never found. October 12, 1997, 7:23 a.m., a small town in Argentina. Henri Sauce, now calling himself Carlos Mendoza, woke up in his new apartment in Bariloche, a small city in the Patagonian region of Argentina. He'd been here for 3 weeks. New name, new identity, new life. The deal had been simple. Full cooperation in exchange for complete disappearance. He'd spent 4 days being debriefed by intelligence officers who recorded every detail of his involvement. The phone calls, the instructions, the payment, the night in the tunnel. Then they'd given him new papers, a new history, and a one-way ticket to South America, along with a bank account containing $200,000, enough to start over, with the implicit understanding that returning to France or contacting anyone from his former life would result in consequences he wouldn't enjoy. Henri had accepted the deal because the alternative was unthinkable. Being identified as the Fiat driver would make him the most hated man on earth. His daughter Marie would be destroyed by association. His life would be over, so he disappeared. And with him disappeared the truth about what really happened in that tunnel. He would live in Argentina for the next 26 years, always looking over his shoulder, always wondering if someone would find him, always carrying the weight of knowing that his simple job had helped kill a princess, and he would take most of his secrets to the grave. 2008, the inquest. During the official British inquest into Diana's death, the white Fiat Uno was discussed extensively. Witnesses testified about seeing it. Experts analyzed the paint transfer and taillight fragment. Investigators explained their unsuccessful attempts to locate the vehicle. But no one mentioned that the car had been found within days of the crash. No one mentioned that the driver had been identified, debriefed, and relocated. No one mentioned the intelligence operation that had buried the evidence. Lord Justice Scott Baker, who presided over the inquest, concluded that the Fiat Uno's identity remained a mystery, but was not central to understanding the cause of the crash. The jury returned a verdict of unlawful killing due to the gross negligence of Henri Paul, the driver, and the paparazzi. The white Fiat Uno was officially designated as an unresolved element, a historical footnote, a mystery that would never be solved. Except it had been solved within 72 hours, and the solution had been deliberately buried. March 2019, Bariloche, Argentina. Henri Sauce was 75 years old when the cancer diagnosis came. Stage 4, inoperable, 6 months, maybe less. He'd lived quietly in Argentina for 22 years. He'd remarried a local woman who knew nothing of his past. He'd worked odd jobs. He'd tried to build a normal life, but the guilt had never left him. The knowledge that he'd played a role, however unwitting, in killing Princess Diana, the awareness that the world had been lied to about what happened that night. As he faced his final months, Henri made a decision. He would tell the truth. He would document everything: the phone calls, the instructions, the money, the intelligence officers, the deal. He would write it all down and send it to journalists who might listen. But before he could finish writing his confession, Henri received a visitor. A man in his 60s, speaking French with a Parisian accent, who knocked on his door one afternoon and introduced himself simply as an old colleague. "We heard about your diagnosis," the man said. "We're very sorry. We wanted to check in, make sure you had everything you needed." Henri understood immediately. "I'm not going to say anything. I've kept quiet for 22 years. We know, and we appreciate that. But we also know that dying men sometimes feel compelled to clear their conscience. We wanted to remind you that your family is still in France. Your daughter Marie, your grandchildren. They've built good lives. It would be unfortunate if anything disrupted that." Henri felt cold despite the Argentine heat. "That's a threat. It's a reminder. You made an agreement. That agreement doesn't have an expiration date." The man left, and Henri understood he would die with his secrets, because the alternative was putting his family at risk. He burned the pages he'd written. He cancelled the emails he'd drafted. And he died 4 months later, in July 2019, taking most of the truth with him. Most, but not all. November 2023, Paris. 26 years after Diana's death, a retired French intelligence officer named Michel Garnier, the same man who had interrogated Henri Sauce in 1997, was diagnosed with terminal illness. Unlike Henri, Garnier had no family to protect, no grandchildren to worry about, no one who could be threatened, and Garnier had been carrying the weight of the Diana cover-up for more than a quarter century. In his final months, Garnier made contact with a documentary filmmaker. He provided documents, photographs of the white Fiat Uno, transcripts of Henri Sauce's debriefing, evidence of the intelligence operation to suppress the truth. "I was following orders," Garnier said in a recorded interview. "But following orders doesn't make you innocent. We knew within days that the Fiat driver had been hired. We knew it wasn't an accident, or at least not entirely an accident. Someone wanted that car in that tunnel at that specific time. And we buried it because revealing the truth would have been too destabilizing." "Who hired Saucet?" The filmmaker asked. "We never found out. The phone calls were routed through multiple countries. The money was untraceable. Whoever set this up was professional, government-level resources. But whether it was British, French, or someone else, we couldn't determine." "What happened to Saucet?" "Relocated to South America. We kept tabs on him for years. He died in 2019 in Argentina. Never spoke publicly. The man kept his end of the bargain." "Why are you telling this now?" Garnier looked directly into the camera. "Because I'm dying, and I'm tired of carrying lies. The world deserves to know that Diana's death wasn't a simple accident. There were elements of planning, of coordination, of conspiracy, and the official investigations were deliberately steered away from discovering the truth." The documentary aired in France in December 2023. The response was immediate and explosive. Calls for new investigations, demands for declassification of intelligence files. Conspiracy theories that had been dismissed for decades suddenly had credible support. The British government issued a statement calling Garnier's claims unsubstantiated and irresponsible. The French government declined to comment, and the royal family, through palace representatives, maintained that Diana's death had been thoroughly investigated and that no new inquiry was warranted. But the genie was out of the bottle. The white Fiat Uno, the car that had been never found, had actually been found within days. The driver, who was never identified, had been identified, debriefed and paid off. The mystery that had supposedly remained unsolved for 26 years had actually been solved in 72 hours, and the cover-up had been deliberate, coordinated, and successful. Until now, today, the white Fiat Uno has become a symbol, not just of Diana's death, but of how truth can be buried when it threatens powerful interests. The car itself was destroyed decades ago. Henri Saucet is dead. Most of the intelligence officers involved are either dead or silent. But the evidence Garnier provided, documents, photographs, transcripts, remains. And it tells a story that official narratives have spent 26 years denying. Someone hired Henri Saucet to be in that tunnel. Someone paid him to create an obstacle for the Mercedes. Whether that person intended for Diana to die, or merely intended to slow her car for some other purpose, we may never know. But the crash wasn't random. The Fiat wasn't a coincidence. And the cover-up wasn't incompetence. William and Harry now know about Garnier's revelations. They've seen the evidence. They've read the transcripts. And those who know them say the information has affected both princes deeply, confirming their worst suspicions about their mother's death, but also leaving them with an impossible choice. Do they demand new investigations, knowing it will never bring their mother back and might destabilize institutions they're part of? Or do they accept that some truths, even when revealed, can never lead to justice? For now, they've chosen silence, but that silence feels different now, heavier, more loaded with knowledge and anger and grief, because they know what we now know. Their mother's death wasn't the tragic accident the world was told it was. It was something darker, something planned, something that powerful forces worked very hard to hide. And the white Fiat Uno, dismissed for years as an unsolvable mystery, was actually the key to understanding everything. The car that was found but never found. The driver who was identified but never identified. The truth that was known but never known, until a dying man decided that some secrets are too important to take to the grave. So here we stand at the end of this story, holding evidence that changes everything. We thought we knew about that night in Paris, a hired driver, a planned obstacle, an intelligence cover-up that lasted 26 years, and the revelation that the mystery of the white Fiat Uno was never a mystery at all, just a lie, maintained by those with the power to bury truth. What do you believe? Was Henri Saucet a paid operative in a larger conspiracy, or was he telling the truth about being manipulated into creating a harmless obstacle? And who had the resources, the motivation, and the access to plan something this elaborate? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This is where we piece together the truth, where we demand accountability, where we refuse to let Diana's story be buried beneath official lies. If this revelation shook you, please subscribe. There are more buried truths waiting to surface, evidence that's been hidden, witnesses who've been silenced, documents that powerful forces never wanted released. Together, we'll make sure every piece of the puzzle is finally revealed. Together, we'll demand the truth. Together, we'll never stop asking what really happened that night in Paris.